What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. Okay, so today we have an old friend, the ex-Minister of Defense of Russia, Sergei Shoigu. He is no longer occupying his post, but he still continues to bring us joy in form of pretty interesting and relatively ridiculous videos. So in this particular one, he was being presented the captured military equipment and vehicles of NATO, the full power of it. So the person proceeds to show Comrade Shoigu the following items. First, it is the armored personnel carrier M113. Okay, then there are some rifles, some other military equipment, like small stuff, like nothing extraordinary. I mean, they already know about everything. But the last, the person saved the best for the last. And this particular is just a white Ford Ranger pickup truck. Not modified, doesn't have turrets, nothing like this, does not even have a camouflage paint. Which potentially means they could have even taken this from a poor civilian Ukrainian farmer, brought this to show it to Shoigu and say him, Comrade Shoigu, we present you the full power, the full military force of this NATO alliance. As you can see, nothing to be afraid of, except that maybe people will start laughing at us. Which, guys, I'm assuming we did. Well, there you have it. Now it is time to be more serious. And let's first of all talk about the situation in the east of Ukraine, where Ukrainians did launch their own counteroffensive in Kharkiv and they even initiated a purge in Chasiv Yar. And then we're gonna briefly talk about the south in Ukraine, where Ukrainians are slowly sneaking their way into Crimea. But first of all, just one quick thing from the outside of Ukrainian territory. Specifically, Ukrainians were able to destroy a pretty important and very expensive, very sophisticated piece of Russian military equipment, specifically this over-the-horizon radar called Voronezh M. And the most extraordinary thing is that this thing was located 1800 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border, which is approximately, if my math is correct, I would say 1100 miles. Just imagine a Ukrainian drone flew this distance without being intercepted. Like, Russian air defense is pretty bad, to say the least. Next we go already to the territory of Ukraine, and our first stop brings us to the city of Vovchansk along Kharkiv front line, where unfortunately there are still civilians left, but Ukrainians were able to use an FPV reconnaissance drone to find the position, the temporary base of the Z army inside one of the houses, and they precisely and extremely effectively destroyed this house with just these Z army representatives inside, alone, nobody else. Compared to the footage I was showing you guys in the previous week, where Russians were just randomly destroying the entire streets and neighborhoods. And the best part about this particular part of the front line is that according to the general staff of Ukraine, they were able to completely stall the advancement of Russians, and they even launched their own counteroffensive in Kharkiv region. Specifically, there is absolutely not a single capture of land by Russians along Kharkiv front line in the last several days. But unfortunately it might not be over just yet, because according to the Institute for the Study of War report, Russians still continue to concentrate their forces to the north of the border. One of the biggest groupings is located in Belgorod region, and then there is also some separate concentrations of Z army in Bryansk and in Kursk regions. Potentially they will be advancing once again either to Kharkiv or maybe to Sumy, could be both, but I do not personally think that they will have enough forces for these two front lines. And still, the Institute for the Study of War also thinks that this is just purely for the distraction purposes. And specifically the concentration of the Z army in Belgorod region, potential settlements where they might advance are called Bogodukhov and Zalochev. Next we go to the actual eastern front lines, and first of all some local residents in Luhansk. They did report some extremely loud noises last night. Ukrainian representatives mentioned that the ATACMS were used in this attack, and they reportedly targeted a local aviation school for the Z army, where future pilots were trained. But then according to the Ministry of Defense of Russia, obviously they claim that they were able to intercept everything, not a single important target on the ground was destroyed. But well, you cannot fool the regular people. You cannot fool the regular local residents who live there, who see those things with their own eyes, literally out of their own windows. And yes, even the local residents in Lugansk, they do confirm that yes, there was an aviation school in this particular area, and most likely it has been damaged or even fully destroyed. Just a couple of last things from the east of Ukraine before I talk about the south, and first of all is this pretty interesting video from Donetsk frontline, where one single Ukrainian tank is fighting against a concentration of the Russian infantry. It was a pretty chaotic for the Russian side in the beginning. Eventually they did manage to use a rocket launcher against the tank, but the armor of the tank was able to resist this attack like it was absolutely nothing. And yet another very interesting video from the eastern frontline is this one, from Chasiv Yar, by some people called as the third Bakhmut. And if you remember, this is exactly where Russians were trying to advance approximately a couple of months ago, whenever they were still interested in the east of Ukraine, until they switched their attention to Kharkiv frontline. Long story short, they were not able to enter the city, to take the positions, to entrench there, nothing like this. But yet still some individuals, some like small detachments, some small units, they were able to enter the outskirts of Chasiv Yar and start hiding like inside abandoned houses, in the basements, things like this, right? And well, this video demonstrates us that the Ukrainian army now entered Chasiv Yar and started literally purging the remains of the Z army away from the city, leaving it completely purified. The entirety of this video is recorded as a first-person view camera, and it's basically all the way since the beginning, when the person leaves the armored personnel carrier, then there's some street fights, and then he goes house to house. Full version, obviously, there is no way I can show it right here on YouTube, but guys, if you want to see full and uncensored version, as always it is on my Patreon, the link is down below, highly recommend, please go ahead and check it. Right, now as promised, let's briefly talk about the situation in the south of Ukraine, but before we go there, if you don't mind guys, if you do like this style of daily news updates, can you please simply like this video, subscribe to my channel, it helps a lot, trust me, just simply subscribing, this is a massive support. For this, I thank you. If you're also interested in the stock market news, I have a second channel, The Russian Dude Investing, you can go ahead and check it, the link is also down below. And so yeah, the south of Ukraine. First stop is this Dnipro river, specifically southern part of Kherson region, where Ukrainians, according to the most recent reports, finally were able to expand their bridgehead, which was originally all the way next to Krinky, and now it expanded all the way to Kazachie Lahiri. So right now Ukrainians, they do have a little bit bigger area to cross Dnipro river and to successfully do it, because yes, crossing water obstacles is extremely complicated. And this will allow them in the future to liberate the rest of Kherson region a little bit easier. And obviously all this is done for the future liberation of the Crimean Peninsula, the biggest pain point of Putin, because as soon as Crimea is endangered, this is when he will shut down his narrative like, no, it is Ukrainians who do not want not to talk or anything like this. No. Just quote me on this, just take a picture, record a video of this part of the video, telling you guys, as soon as Crimea is endangered, Putin will be much more willing to talk. And another thing what Ukrainians do in preparation for this massive game-changing event is that they continue to strike distant targets of Russians, such as, for example, right here is the picture from Skadovsk, where according once again to some local residents, there was either a concentration of Russian forces or their local ammunition depot. And as you can see, even though the attention right now is primarily in the east of Ukraine and the Kharkiv frontline, Ukrainians do not forget about their own south. That is why they constantly try to cross Dnipro river, send small detachments, expand their bridgehead, target the defenses of Russians, probe their defenses, destroy military objects of Russians which are away from the front line. Well, once again, all this done in preparation for the future liberation of Crimea, which will be a massive event. We are also having right now more and more Western support arriving into Ukraine, so this pressure will only increase in the future. And as soon as some very first attempts of Ukrainians to liberate Crimea begin, this is when, guys, we're gonna have a completely different and new war. And ultimately, let's talk about Russian veterans who came back from this special military operation, but they turned out to be not even close to be as heroes as Putin wanted to portray them. Because the majority of Russians who do return, they actually become a nightmare for their local residents and for their neighbors. In this specific example, we're gonna be talking about ex-Wagner soldiers, and this chapter is for my Patreon exclusive members. So guys, if you want to continue watching and if you want to see fully uncensored footage and episodes, as always, please go ahead and check my Patreon, link is down below. Literally the best way to support my work right now. For this, thank you so much. Well, there you have it, guys. Please subscribe to my channel if you like these videos. Don't forget about my second channel, The Russian Dude Investing. All the other links are down below: PayPal, Patreon, Instagram, and of course merch. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow.